Have you ever wondered why your grandfather's old truck is still running while your neighbor's fancy new car is already having issues? What if I told you that some cars from decades ago were engineered so well they're practically immortal? We're talking about vehicles that laugh in the face of planned obsolescence, machines that were built when quality over quantity actually meant something. Today we're counting down 10 old cars that were built to last forever, and trust me, some of these are still cruising the highways after 500,000 miles. So buckle up and hit that like button if you've ever owned a car that just wouldn't die, because this one's going to be a wild ride through automotive immortality. Number 10. Mercedes-Benz W123 1976-1985. In the late 1970s, Mercedes-Benz did something radical. They over-engineered a car, not just a little bit. We're talking about the automotive equivalent of building a nuclear bunker when all you needed was a garden shed. The W123 series wasn't just built to last, it was built to outlive civilizations. And here's the thing, they actually did. These cars were so ridiculously overbuilt that Mercedes engineers reportedly used twice the amount of metal they actually needed in critical areas. The doors, they weighed as much as modern car hoods. The body panels, thick enough to stop small caliber bullets. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but not by much. In Morocco, these cars are still used as taxis today, with many sporting over 600,000 miles on the original engines. That's not a typo. 600,000 miles. The secret was simple. Mercedes threw money at quality like it was going out of style. Every component was tested to destruction, then redesigned to be even stronger. The diesel engines, especially the legendary OM617, were practically agricultural in their simplicity and durability. No turbo, no fancy electronics, just pure mechanical reliability. These engines were so under stress that running them at highway speeds was like asking Usain Bolt to take a leisurely stroll. But here's where it gets really interesting. Mercedes lost money on every W123 they sold. The bean counters were pulling their hair out. The amount of engineering and materials that went into these cars was economically insane. It's like they forgot they were supposed to be a business and decided to become a charity for people who needed cars that would last forever. The vacuum-operated central locking system alone had enough redundancy to make NASA jealous. Today, finding a well-maintained W123 is like striking gold. They become the cockroaches of the automotive world in the best possible way. After nuclear war, there will be cockroaches, Keith Richards, and W123 Mercedes still puttering along. And the craziest part? Many owners report these cars actually get more reliable with age, as if they're just getting warmed up after the first 200,000 miles. Number 9. Honda Accord, 3rd generation, 1986 to 1989. Honda in the 1980s was like that overachieving student who ruins the curve for everyone else. While American manufacturers were cutting corners faster than a NASCAR driver, Honda engineers were having meetings about meetings to discuss the optimal thread pitch for seat adjustment screws. The 3rd generation Accord wasn't just built well, it was built with an almost religious devotion to the idea that cars shouldn't break, ever. These Accords came from an era when Honda's philosophy was simple: build it right the first time, because warranty claims are dishonorable. No, seriously, Honda engineers would literally lose sleep over a squeaky dashboard. The result was a mid-sized sedan that could survive anything short of a direct meteor strike, and even then, the engine would probably still start. The engines in these Accords were masterpieces of simplicity. The fuel injection system was so straightforward that shade tree mechanics could understand it after a six-pack. No complicated computer systems, no 17 different sensors to fail, just pure mechanical efficiency. The manual transmissions shifted like Swiss watches, and the automatics, well, they shifted like slightly less expensive Swiss watches. Owners routinely reported hitting 300,000 miles with nothing more than oil changes and the occasional timing belt. But here's what really set these Accords apart. The attention to detail was borderline obsessive. The door hinges were over-engineered to the point of absurdity. The weather stripping was designed to last decades, not years. Even the freaking cup holders, when they finally added them, were tested for 100,000 insertion cycles. Who does that? Honda, in the 1980s, that's who. The real testament to their durability: go to any developing nation where cars are driven until they literally fall apart, and you'll see these 3rd-gen Accords everywhere. In Cuba, where keeping a car running is basically a national sport, these Hondas are prized possessions. They've become the automotive equivalent of that cast iron pan your grandmother passed down. Ugly, simple, and absolutely indestructible. Mechanics in Ghana call them forever cars because they've seen them survive conditions that would kill a Land Cruiser. And the best part, when something does finally break after 400,000 miles, the parts are so simple that you can probably fix it with basic hand tools and determination. Number 8. Jeep Cherokee XJ, 1984-2001. When AMC engineers sat down to design the Cherokee XJ in the early 1980s, they apparently decided subtlety was for losers. Instead of creating just another SUV, they built what can only be described as a motorized middle finger to the concept of planned obsolescence. The XJ wasn't just tough, it was survive the apocalypse and then drive through the rubble. Tough. The secret sauce was the unibody construction, which sounds boring until you realize it made the XJ lighter, stronger, and more rigid than traditional body-on-frame SUVs. It was like building a tank out of origami. Shouldn't work, but somehow did. The 4.0-liter inline-six engine, that thing was basically immortal. Jeep engineers apparently confused engine design with building a doomsday device. These engines regularly hit 300,000 miles while being maintained with the automotive equivalent of thoughts and prayers. What made the XJ truly special was its simplicity. no fancy electronics to fail, no complicated all-wheel drive systems with 17 different modes for terrain you'll never encounter. Just a transfer case, solid axles, and enough ground clearance to drive over your enemies. Or rocks. Mostly rocks. The cooling system was so overbuilt that you could probably use it to cool a nuclear reactor. The transmission, bulletproof. Literally. People have shot them and they still worked. But here's where it gets weird. The exterior became so legendary for reliability that it created its own cult. Not a metaphorical cult, an actual group of people who worship these things like mechanical deities. They call it the XJ Mafia, and they're not kidding. These people will defend their Cherokees with religious fervor. They swap stories about XJs with 500,000 miles like fishermen talking about the one that got away, except these stories are actually true. The United States Postal Service bought thousands of them for rural mail delivery. Think about that. An organization that literally goes through vehicles like tissue paper chose the XJ because they needed something that wouldn't die. 20 years later, many of those mail jeeps are still running. They've been rolled, flooded, shot at, driven through things that shouldn't be driven through, and they keep going. It's like Jeep accidentally created the automotive equivalent of Wolverine. It just heals itself and refuses to die. Today, finding a clean XJ is like finding a unicorn, except unicorns are probably easier to kill. Number 7. Ford Crown Victoria, 1992 to 2011. Ford's Crown Victoria was the automotive equivalent of a cockroach wearing a police uniform. When Ford engineers designed this beast, they apparently asked themselves one question: what if we built a car that could survive being driven by the worst drivers in America 24 hours a day for years on end? The answer was the Crown Vic, and brother, did they nail it. This wasn't just a car, it was a mobile fortress designed to withstand the kind of abuse that would make other vehicles cry. Police departments didn't choose the Crown Vic because it was fast or nimble, they chose it because you could drive it into a brick wall, reverse out, and chase the bad guys without missing a beat. The body-on-frame construction was so robust it was basically a truck wearing a sedan costume. The 4.6-liter V8 engine, it was under stress to the point of boredom. Running at highway speeds all day was like asking a powerlifter to pick up a pencil. The real magic was in the details nobody talks about. The cooling system was designed for extended idle times, because cops sit a lot. The electrical system could handle enough accessories to run a small radio station. The suspension was built to handle 400-pound officers with 50 pounds of gear, jumping curbs at 60 mph. The transmission was so overbuilt that Ford engineers probably high-fived each other every time one lasted another 100,000 miles without maintenance. But here's the beautiful irony. When police departments retired these cars with 150,000 hard miles, they were just getting broken in. Taxi companies would buy them and run them for another 300,000 miles. Then, when the taxis were done, regular people would buy them and drive them for another 200,000. It's like the automotive circle of life, except nothing actually dies. There are Crown Vics out there with 600,000 miles still doing Uber runs. That's not longevity, that's basically immortality with a vinyl bench seat. The Crown Victoria became such a symbol of indestructibility that when Ford finally killed it in 2011, police departments literally stockpiled them. They bought extras to cannibalize for parts, ensuring their fleets could run until the heat death of the universe. Some departments are still running Crown Vics today, 13 years after production ended. They've tried newer cars, sure, but they keep coming back to their trusty Crown Vics like a comfortable pair of shoes that happen to weigh 4,000 pounds and run on regular unleaded. When the apocalypse comes, it'll be driven in a Crown Victoria, probably an ex-cop car, definitely still running. Number 6. Volvo 240, 1974-1993. In 1974, Volvo engineers apparently attended a meeting where someone said, "Let's build a car that's safer than a bomb shelter and more reliable than gravity." Then, they actually did it. The Volvo 240 wasn't just built to last, it was built to outlive your children, your children's children, and possibly several minor civilizations. This wasn't a car, it was a Swedish monument to the concept of good enough being the enemy of absolutely perfect. The 240's design philosophy was simple: make everything 3 times stronger than necessary, then add more metal just to be safe. The result was a car that looked like a refrigerator on wheels, but had the structural integrity of a bank vault. The BT1 and B23 engines were so overbuilt that Volvo engineers reportedly tested them by running them without oil until they seized, then redesigning them to last even longer. These engines regularly hit 400,000 miles with basic maintenance. Some have passed 500,000. There are documented cases of 240s with over 1,000,000 miles. Million. With an M. But the real genius was in the simplicity. While other manufacturers were adding computers and complexity, Volvo stuck with what worked: mechanical fuel injection that a farmer could understand, manual transmissions that shifted like rifle bolts, automatic transmissions that, well, they shifted eventually, but they do it forever. The heating system could warm a small house. The seats were designed by orthopedic specialists who apparently believed comfort was a human right. Everything was designed to be fixed with basic tools by people who learned mechanics from library books. The safety innovations were so far ahead of their time, it was almost unfair. Crumple zones, 3-point seatbelts, reinforced passenger compartments. Volvo was doing this stuff when other manufacturers were still debating whether seatbelts were really necessary. They crash tested these cars so thoroughly that the 240 became the benchmark for safety. Insurance companies loved them. parents loved them. Mechanics loved them because they were easy to work on. The only people who didn't love them were probably gas station owners because 240 owners rarely needed a visit except for fuel. Here's the kicker. Volvo 240s have become the unofficial car of the anti-car enthusiast. People who don't care about speed, style, or status, but just want something that will start every morning until the sun explodes. In Portland, Berkeley, and Burlington, beat-up 240s are basically a political statement on wheels. I could buy a new car, they say, but why would I when this one will outlive me? And they're probably right. Scientists studying longevity should probably start with Volvo 240s. Whatever they did to make these things immortal, we need to bottle it. Number 5. Toyota pickup Hilux 1979-1995. Toyota in the 1980s looked at American pickup trucks breaking down and said, hold our sake. What they created wasn't just a truck, it was basically the automotive equivalent of that friend who never gets sick, never complains, and somehow manages to show up to work during a Category 5 hurricane. The Toyota pickup, known as the Hilux everywhere else, redefined what built to last meant. These trucks were so legendarily indestructible that the BBC's Top Gear literally tried to kill one. They drowned it in the ocean, set it on fire, dropped it from a crane, hit it with a wrecking ball, placed it on top of a building that was then demolished, and after all that, the damn thing still started, with basic tools. This wasn't television magic, this was just a Tuesday for a Toyota pickup. The show's hosts were genuinely disturbed by their inability to kill it. The secret was Toyota's philosophy of Kaizen, continuous improvement taken to an almost psychotic level. Every weak point discovered in testing resulted in a redesign. Every warranty claim was treated like a personal insult to the engineer who designed that part. The 22R and 22RE engines were masterpieces of simplicity and over-engineering. They made decent power, sipped fuel, and absolutely refused to die. Timing chains instead of belts. Simple fuel injection. Cooling systems designed for Death Valley in August while towing a house. But here's what really made these trucks special. They were the Swiss Army knives of the automotive world. Need to haul a half-ton of concrete? No problem. Cross a river? Sure thing. Survive a war zone? Actually, yes, these trucks became the unofficial vehicle of conflict zones worldwide because they simply wouldn't stop running. In places where automotive parts are rarer than unicorn tears, Toyota pickups keep going with maintenance that consists mainly of hope and occasionally hitting things with hammers. The frame rails were so overbuilt they could probably be used as bridge supports. The leaf springs were designed by someone who apparently thought the truck would be used for lunar exploration. The manual transmissions were agricultural in their simplicity and strength. Even the rust, and yes, they did rust, seemed to happen in slow motion compared to other trucks. It was like the rust was intimidated by the rest of the truck's refusal to die. Today, finding a clean Toyota pickup from this era is like finding gold. Except gold is easier to destroy. These trucks have become so legendary that Toyota brought back the Hilux name in other markets just to cash in on the reputation. But the new ones, despite being excellent trucks, will never match the sheer bloody-minded indestructibility of the originals. Number 4. Chevrolet Suburban, 1973 to 1991. Before SUVs became glorified minivans for people afraid to admit they had kids, there was the Chevrolet Suburban. And the 1973-1991 generation wasn't just built tough. It was built like Chevrolet expected it to be used in a post-apocalyptic wasteland where replacement parts would be fashioned from scrap metal and determination. This wasn't a vehicle. It was a four-wheeled survival bunker that happened to have the windows. The Suburban from this era was essentially a pickup truck that ate its Wheaties and kept growing. The frame was so overbuilt it could probably support a small building. The body panels were thick enough that minor accidents just added character instead of damage. But the real magic was under the hood. Whether you got the small block 350 or the big block 454, these engines were under stress to the point of being bored. They weren't highly tuned performance machines. They were lazy, torque-rich monsters that could pull trees out of the ground while barely breaking a sweat. What made these Suburbans truly immortal was their simplicity. The four-wheel drive system was mechanical, not electronic. You pulled a lever, things engaged, and you could drive through hell's front yard. The transmission? Either a bulletproof 3-speed automatic or a manual that required the grip strength of a gorilla but would outlast the heat death of the universe. The electrical system was so simple you could troubleshoot it with a test light and common sense. No computers, no sensors, no problems. But here's the beautiful thing. These Suburbans were designed for real work, not hauling soccer balls and juice boxes, actual work. Construction companies, oil fields, ranches, and government agencies bought them by the thousand because they needed vehicles that could carry 9 people and their gear through conditions that would make a mountain goat nervous, and they delivered. There are Suburbans from this era still working on ranches with 500,000 miles on them, still hauling, still towing, still refusing to acknowledge that they should have died 300,000 miles ago. The interior was Spartan by today's standards, but that was the point. Vinyl seats that could be hosed out, metal dashboards that laughed at UV damage, controls that could be operated with work gloves. Everything was designed to be abused by people who viewed vehicles as tools, not status symbols. And the size? These things were massive even by today's standards. You didn't park a Suburban, you docked it. But that size meant you could fit anything inside. Sheets of plywood? Easy. A small motorcycle? Why not? Your enemy's entire family? Hypothetically. Today, these old Suburbans have achieved legendary status among people who need vehicles that just work. They're the automotive equivalent of a sledgehammer. Not pretty, not sophisticated, but absolutely perfect for what they do. Number 3. Cummins-powered Dodge Ram 1989-1993. In 1989, Dodge did something that seemed insane at the time. They took a commercial truck engine designed for vehicles that never stop running and stuffed it into a pickup truck. The Cummins 5.9L turbo diesel wasn't just overbuilt, it was built for applications where failure meant bankruptcy. Putting it in a consumer pickup was like giving a suburban dad a chainsaw designed for professional loggers. It was glorious overkill. The first generation Cummins Ram wasn't pretty. The interior was basically plastic and hope. The ride quality was somewhere between agricultural and medieval torture device. But none of that mattered because the drivetrain was essentially immortal. The Cummins engine was rated for 1 million miles in commercial applications. In a pickup truck carrying lighter loads, it was basically just getting warmed up at 300,000 miles. These engines were so under stress that many owners reported better fuel economy after 200,000 miles as everything finally loosened up. The real beauty was in the mechanical simplicity. The fuel system was purely mechanical. A Bosch P7100 injection pump that could run on anything from diesel to filtered French fry oil. No computers, no emissions equipment to fail, just pure mechanical injection that was timed with the precision of a Swiss watch and the durability of a medieval mace. The turbocharger was sized conservatively, providing reliable boost without stress. Everything was designed for longevity over performance. But here's where it gets interesting. These trucks created their own economy. People would buy rusted out first-gen Cummins Rams just for the engine, then swap it into newer trucks when those engines failed. The Cummins was so valuable that trucks with blown transmissions, rusted frames, and interiors that looked like crime scenes still sold for thousands of dollars. It was like finding a diamond in a pile of rust. The engine was worth more than the rest of the truck combined. The manual transmission option, the GetDrag 360, was equally overbuilt. It was designed for medium-duty commercial trucks and was basically loafing in a pickup application. The automatics were the weak link, but even those could be built to handle the Cummins torque. Everything else on the truck might fall apart, none often did, but that engine would keep running. There are documented cases of these engines hitting 700,000 miles on original internals. Some have passed 1 million. They've become so legendary that 12-valve Cummins is basically shorthand for unkillable in truck circles. Dodge accidentally created a cult when they put that engine in their trucks. They thought they were just trying to sell more pickups. Instead, they created mechanical immortality. Number 2. Mercedes-Benz W123 S-Class, 1979-1991. When Mercedes-Benz set out to build the W123 S-Class, they apparently decided that cost-cutting was a dirty phrase that should never be uttered in polite company. This wasn't just a luxury car, it was an engineering manifesto written in steel and leather that declared war on the very concept of mechanical failure. The W126 was what happened when German engineers were given an unlimited budget and told to build the best car in the world, full stop. The level of over-engineering in the W126 was so extreme it bordered on the pathological. The doors closed with a bank vault thunk that made other luxury cars sound like tin cans. The paint wasn't just applied, it was layered like a Renaissance masterpiece, with primer, base coat, color coat, and clear coat that could survive a nuclear blast. The body was galvanized to prevent rust with a process so thorough that finding a rusty W126 is like finding a modest billionaire. Theoretically possible, but highly unlikely. But the real magic was in the mechanicals. The engines, whether you got the inline-6 or the V8, were built with tolerances so tight that Mercedes engineers supposedly needed special clean rooms just to assemble them. These weren't high-strung performance engines, they were under-stressed masterpieces that could run at 80 mph all day, while barely breaking a sweat. The legendary OM6 diesel could run on basically anything flammable and would outlive your grandchildren. The gasoline engines were equally bulletproof, with many examples passing 500,000 miles with just regular maintenance. The climate control system was designed by engineers who apparently believed that maintaining perfect cabin temperature was a fundamental human right. It had redundant systems, backup systems for the redundant systems, and enough vacuum lines to confuse a spaghetti chef. When something did fail, and it was always when, not if, with the vacuum systems, the car had so many failsafes that you might not even notice. The suspension was so advanced that it made contemporary Rolls-Royces feel agricultural, self-leveling, load compensating, and somehow still reliable after decades. Here's the kicker. Mercedes lost money on every W126 they sold. The amount of engineering, materials, and sheer bloody-minded perfectionism that went into these cars was economically insane. It was like they forgot they were a business and decided to become a charity for people who wanted immortal luxury cars. Today, a well-maintained W126 isn't just a classic car, it's a rolling reminder of what happens when engineers are allowed to ignore accountants. These cars regularly appear in developing nations as high-end taxis with 600,000 miles on them, still purring along like mechanical aristocrats who refuse to acknowledge that they should have died 400,000 miles ago. Number 1. Toyota Land Cruiser FJ60 FJ62 1980-1990. At the top of our list sits the Toyota Land Cruiser 60 series, and honestly, nothing else even comes close. This wasn't just built to last forever, it was built to last forever while crossing the Sahara, fording rivers, and climbing mountains that would make a billy goat nervous. Toyota didn't just over-engineer the Land Cruiser, they apparently engineered it for a different planet where the laws of mechanical failure don't apply. The FJ60 and FJ62 were the culmination of decades of Toyota, learning what breaks in the most hostile environments on Earth, and then designing those problems out of existence. The straight-six engines, the 2F and later the 3FE, weren't powerful, but they were essentially agricultural equipment masquerading as automotive engines. These motors were so under stress that running at highway speeds was like asking a sumo wrestler to lift a coffee cup. They regularly hit 400,000 miles. Some have passed 600,000. There are documented examples with over 1 million miles still running on original internals, but the engine was just the beginning. Every component was designed with the assumption that it would need to work in places where the nearest mechanic was 500 miles away, and the only tools available were rocks and determination. The manual transmission was so robust it could probably be used as a boat anchor. The transfer case was simpler than a hammer and twice as reliable. The axles were strong enough to be used in construction equipment. Even the door hinges were overbuilt to the point of absurdity. What really set the 60 series apart was its role as the UN's vehicle of choice for the world's worst places. When humanitarian organizations needed vehicles that absolutely, positively, had to work in conditions that would make Mad Max cry, they bought Land Cruisers. These trucks have been through wars, natural disasters, and humanitarian crises on every continent. They've been shot at, blown up, rolled down mountains, and submerged in rivers, and they keep running. In Africa, where vehicles face conditions that would destroy lesser machines in hours, Land Cruiser 60s are still working vehicles decades after they left the factory. The simplicity was beautiful. Manual everything. No computers, no complex electronics, just mechanical systems that could be fixed with basic tools and determination. The cooling system was designed for Death Valley. The electrical system was simple enough that a talented 12-year-old could rewire it. Everything was accessible, serviceable, and built to standards that modern manufacturers would consider economically suicidal. Toyota lost money on every Land Cruiser they sold because they refused to compromise on quality. It was like they were building vehicles for their own families to use in the apocalypse. Today, finding a clean FJ60 or FJ62 is like striking gold, except gold is softer and less valuable. These trucks have transcended mere transportation to become symbols of mechanical immortality. They're the standard by which all other reliable vehicles are judged, and they're still winning. And there you have it. That's 10 old cars that were built to last forever, and most of them are still out there proving it every single day. Which one of these mechanical immortals have you owned or dreamed of owning? And more importantly, do you have a story about a car that just refused to die? Drop it in the comments below. We love hearing about vehicles that laugh in the face of planned obsolescence. If you enjoyed this countdown through automotive history's most indestructible machines, smash that like button and subscribe for more content about the cars that time forgot, but somehow keep running anyway. Thanks for watching, and remember, they really don't make them like they used to.
Hi, this is Barry.
A door is ajar.
Remember that fancy new car feature your dad was so proud of? The one that seemed like the height of technology at the time? Well, there's a good chance it's now completely obsolete and laughably impractical. From record players that couldn't handle a pothole to seatbelts that tried to strangle you, automotive history is littered with features that seemed revolutionary but turned out to be absolutely useless. Today we're counting down 10 of the most ridiculous car features that thankfully faded into oblivion. And trust me, some of these are so bizarre you'll wonder how they ever made it past the drawing board. So buckle up, as manually, of course, like this video, and subscribe if you want more automotive nostalgia. Number 10. Ashtrays in every door. Let's start with something that was once considered essential luxury. In the 1960s and 70s, car manufacturers thought every passenger needed their own personal ashtray, not just one in the dash. Oh no, we're talking ashtrays in every single door panel. Front doors, rear doors, sometimes even in the armrests. A 4-door sedan could have 6 or 7 ashtrays. That's more ashtrays than cup holders in modern cars. And here's the thing, they were terrible at their job. These tiny metal receptacles became magnets for everything except ash. Gum wrappers, loose change, candy remnants, mysterious sticky substances. They'd rattle when you drove. The little flip-top lids would break off. And cleaning them? Forget about it. You'd need tweezers and a prayer to get all the garbage out of those things. The automotive industry was essentially enabling chain smoking on a massive scale. Picture this. Mom smoking in the passenger seat, dad's puffing away while driving, and the kids in the back each have their own ashtray for, what exactly? Their candy cigarettes? By the 1980s, manufacturers started to realize that maybe, just maybe, turning every car into a mobile smoking lounge wasn't the best idea. The health concerns were mounting. Non-smokers were complaining about the smell. And more importantly, that precious door space could be used for actual storage. You know, for things people actually needed, like nowhere to put your phone. Wait, phones didn't fit in pockets back then either. Speaking of which, car ashtrays started disappearing right around the time car phones showed up. Coincidence? Probably not. The last mainstream car to offer a factory ashtray was the 2013 Ferrari 458 Spider. Because apparently, if you're spending $300,000 on a car, you deserve a place to flick your ash. For the rest of us, those days are long gone. And honestly, good riddance. Modern cars have replaced those useless ashtrays with actual storage compartments. Revolutionary concept, right? Number 9. Digital dashboard displays. The 1980s were obsessed with making everything look like it came from the future, and nothing screamed future quite like replacing perfectly functional analog gauges with digital displays. Green or red blocky numbers that looked like they were stolen from a calculator. This was progress, apparently. Except it wasn't. These early digital dashboards were a disaster. First problem, sunlight. Try reading those dim LED numbers on a bright sunny day. You couldn't. The display would completely wash out, leaving you guessing your speed. Hope you're good at estimating. Second problem, polarized sunglasses. Wear them, and the display disappeared entirely, so you had to choose between protecting your eyes or knowing how fast you were going. But wait, it gets worse. When one segment of the display burned out, and they always did, entire numbers became unreadable. Is that an 8 or a 6? Who knows? your speedometer just turned into a guessing game. The Buick Riviera's 1986 touchscreen was supposed to be the pinnacle of this technology. They called it the Graphic Control Center. Black screen, green readout, controlled everything from climate to radio. It looked like something from Star Trek. It worked like something from a garage sale. Slow response times, constant glitches, and impossible to use while driving. Manufacturers spent millions developing these digital disasters. Customers spent thousands buying them. And then everyone collectively realized that maybe, just maybe, a simple needle pointing at numbers was actually the perfect design. By the 1990s, most car makers quietly went back to analog gauges, though they kept some digital elements for things like trip computers. Because apparently, we needed to know our average fuel economy to 3 decimal places. The irony? Modern cars are going back to full digital displays, but now they actually work. Full-color LCD screens that are bright, responsive, and readable. Only took 40 years to get it right. The 1980s walked so that Tesla could run, badly, with blocky green numbers that nobody could read. Number 8, hood ornaments. Picture a gleaming chrome sculpture proudly mounted on your car's hood. The Spirit of Ecstasy on a Rolls Royce. The Leaping Jaguar on, well, a Jaguar. Mercedes' 3-pointed star standing tall. These weren't just logos, they were statements. Status symbols that announced your arrival before you even parked. And they were completely, utterly useless. Worse than useless, actually. They were dangerous. Pedestrian safety? What's that? These metal spikes were basically medieval weapons aimed at anyone unlucky enough to be in front of your car. Hit someone at even low speed, and that beautiful hood ornament became a very expensive spear. Then, there was the theft problem. Hood ornaments were ridiculously easy to steal, just grab, twist, and run. Rolls-Royce eventually had to develop a retractable system because people kept yanking off their $500 flying ladies. Mercedes drivers would wake up to find their star had vanished in the night. It became such an issue that some owners would remove their ornaments before parking, defeating the entire purpose of having one. But the real death blow came from aerodynamics. Turns out, mounting a vertical sculpture on the front of your car isn't great for fuel efficiency. Who would have thought? That proud standing ornament was basically a tiny sail, creating drag and turbulence. In an era of wind tunnels and coefficient calculations, hood ornaments were aerodynamic nightmares. By the 1990s, most manufacturers had given up. Badges moved to the grille where they belonged, flush-mounted, streamlined, and significantly less likely to impale someone. The last holdout? Rolls-Royce, naturally. They still offer the Spirit of Ecstasy, but now it's spring-loaded and retracts on impact. Or at the touch of a button if you're worried about theft. A $400,000 car with a disappearing hood ornament. Peak luxury, apparently. Some people miss them. They added character, they say. Personality. Sure, if your car's personality was I might stab you, modern pedestrian safety regulations essentially banned traditional hood ornaments. And nobody really complained, except maybe the people who used to make a living stealing them. Number 7. Talking cars.
A door is ajar.
Your door is ajar. 4 words that haunted the dreams of 1980s car owners. The talking car was supposed to be the future, a helpful electronic companion that would remind you of important things. Instead, it became the most annoying feature in automotive history. These systems used early speech synthesis technology that made Stephen Hawking sound natural. Robotic voices with all the charm of a speak and spell having a breakdown, and they never shut up. Your fuel is low. Yes, I can see the gauge. Your lights are on. I know, I turned them on. Please fasten your seatbelt. I'm still in my driveway. The worst part, you couldn't turn them off. These electronic nags were hardwired into the car's systems. Some desperate owners would disconnect the speakers entirely. Others learned to live with the constant commentary. Chrysler was particularly proud of their talking cars. The 1980s New Yorker would announce everything. Door status, fuel level, washer fluid, oil pressure. It was like having the world's most pessimistic co-pilot. And God help you if multiple warnings triggered at once. The car would cycle through them endlessly. Your door is ajar. Your fuel is low. Your door is ajar. Your fuel is low. Welcome to automotive hell. The technology was expensive, unreliable, and universally despised. Voice chips would fail, leaving cars speaking in electronic gibberish. Or worse, getting stuck on one phrase. Imagine driving cross-country with your car repeating, "Your door is ajar," every 30 seconds. People did. They survived. Barely. By 1990, the talking car experiment was dead. Manufacturers realized that simple chimes and warning lights worked just fine. A gentle ding-ding was far less annoying than a robot voice stating the obvious, though some luxury brands tried to bring it back in the 2000s with more natural voices. It still didn't work. Turns out, nobody wants their car to talk to them. We want it to shut up and drive. Modern cars have voice recognition instead. You talk to them, not the other way around. Much better system. Though sometimes when you're yelling at your navigation system, you wonder if we've really made progress. Number 6. Push-button transmissions. In the 1950s, Chrysler decided gear shifters were too simple. Why use a lever when you could have buttons? Beautiful, modern, space-age buttons, just like the Jetsons. This would surely be the future of driving. Narrator. It was not the future of driving. The push-button transmission seemed brilliant on paper. Save space, look futuristic, eliminate the mechanical linkage of traditional shifters. Chrysler, Mercury, and Edsel all jumped on board. Packard tried it too. They mounted buttons on steering wheels, dashboards, wherever they'd fit. Press D for drive, R for reverse, N for neutral. What could go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong. First issue, muscle memory. Drivers spent decades learning the pattern of gear shifters. PRNDL was universal. You could operate it without looking. Push buttons, different story. Every manufacturer put them in different places, different orders, different sizes. Imagine trying to quickly shift into reverse while parallel parking. With a lever, it's instinctive. With buttons, you're hunting around the dashboard like you're trying to tune a radio. Second issue, mechanical confusion. These weren't simple electrical switches. They operated complex mechanical systems through cables and servos. When they worked, they were slow. When they didn't work, which was often, you were stuck. No override, no manual control. Your car became a 2-ton paperweight with really cool buttons. The real nail in the coffin came from safety concerns. Federal regulations in the 1960s required a standardized shift pattern. Buttons couldn't comply. Plus, accidental engagement was a real problem. Bump the wrong button, and suddenly you're in reverse at highway speeds, not ideal. Chrysler held on the longest, offering push-button transmissions until 1964. Then they quietly went back to normal shifters. Nobody complained. Nobody missed the buttons. It was like the entire industry collectively agreed to never speak of it again. The irony? Modern cars are bringing back push-button transmissions, but now they're fully electronic, completely reliable, and impossible to accidentally engage. Only took 60 years to figure it out. Still, most people prefer a good old-fashioned shifter. Some things don't need to be revolutionized. Number 5. Hideaway headlights. Pop-up headlights were the coolest feature a car could have. During the day, your car had a sleek aerodynamic nose. At night, the headlights would rise from hidden compartments like automotive transformers. The Corvette had them. The Mazda RX-7 had them. Even the Honda Accord got in on the action. They were everywhere in the 1980s and early 90s. Kids loved them. Adults loved them. They made every car look like it belonged in a spy movie, and they were absolutely terrible. The mechanisms were ridiculously complex. Motors, gears, linkages, all crammed into the front of your car. When they worked, they were slow, taking several seconds to fully deploy. When they failed, and they always failed, you were driving blind. Picture this. It's dark, raining, and one headlight refuses to pop up. Or worse, it pops up halfway and gets stuck at a 45-degree angle. Now, you look like your car is winking at everyone. Sexy. The motors would burn out, the gears would strip, the linkages would freeze in winter. Some cars had manual cranks for emergency operation. Nothing says high-tech sports car like hand cranking your headlights up, like you're starting a Model T. Maintenance was a nightmare. Simple bulb changes became major operations. Water would leak into the mechanisms, causing corrosion. Dirt and debris would jam the systems. And forget about aftermarket replacements. When those motors died, you were looking at serious money to fix them. The final blow came from pedestrian safety regulations. Turns out, having hard-edged metal panels that flip up at face height isn't great for protecting pedestrians. Who could have predicted that? By the late 1990s, new regulations essentially banned pop-up headlights. The 2004 Corvette was the last major car to have them, and honestly, nobody really missed them. Fixed headlights were cheaper, simpler, and more reliable. Modern LED technology made them smaller and easier to integrate into designs. Sure, they looked cool. But looking cool isn't worth driving into a tree because your headlights decided to take the night off. Sometimes a simple solution is the best solution. Revolutionary concept, I know. Number 4. Swivel bucket seats. Getting into a low-slung 1970s personal luxury coupe wasn't easy. Those long, heavy doors, the low roofline, the high door sills. It was like doing automotive yoga every time you wanted to drive. General Motors had a solution. Swivel bucket seats. Just pull a lever, and the seat would rotate 90 degrees to face the door. Slide in comfortably, swivel back to driving position. Brilliant. The Chevrolet Monte Carlo had them. So did the Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme, Pontiac Grand Prix, Buick Regal. If it was a GM personal luxury coupe between 1973 and 1977, you could get swivel seats. They even called them Strato-bucket seats, because everything in the 70s needed a space-age name. On paper, they were genius. In reality, they were a comedy of errors. First problem, they were heavy. Really heavy. All those swivel mechanisms added serious weight to already portly cars. Second problem, they sat too high. The swivel mechanism raised the seat several inches. Tall drivers found their heads brushing the headliner. Third problem, they broke, constantly. The latching mechanisms would fail, leaving seats spinning freely. Imagine taking a corner and having your seat suddenly rotate. Exciting. But the real issue was practicality, or lack thereof. You couldn't swivel both front seats at the same time. They'd hit each other. The center console blocked full rotation, and if you parked too close to another car, you couldn't swivel at all. Plus, they were expensive. Really expensive. A couple $100s in 1970s money for an option that made getting in slightly easier. Most people just learned to slide into their cars like normal humans. GM killed the option after 1977. Nobody complained, nobody asked for them back. They became a quirky footnote in automotive history, a solution to a problem that didn't really exist. Though recently, some minivans have brought back swiveling seats, for different reasons, in different ways. But in the 1970s, they were just another example of Detroit overthinking simple things. Sometimes a seat just needs to be a seat. Not everything needs to rotate, swivel, or transform. Revolutionary thinking for the era. Number 3, Chrysler Highway Hi-Fi. In 1956, Chrysler partnered with CBS to create the ultimate in mobile entertainment, a record player for your car. Not a tape player, not even an 8-track, an actual vinyl record player mounted under your dashboard. What could possibly go wrong with playing delicate vinyl records in a moving vehicle? Everything. Absolutely everything. The Highway Hi-Fi was the brainchild of Peter Goldmark, inventor of the 33 1/3 RPM LP format. He hated rock and roll. despised it. So he created a way for sophisticated motorists to listen to classical music and show tunes while driving. The system used special 7-inch records that played at 16 2/3 RPM. Each side could hold 45 minutes of music. The player was shock-mounted, spring-loaded, and supposedly skip-proof. Supposedly. Here's the reality. It skipped constantly. Hit a pothole, skip. Take a corner, skip. Accelerate too quickly, skip. Brake too hard, skip. Exist on planet Earth, skip. The special records were only available through Chrysler dealers. The selection was limited to about 42 titles. All easy listening, classical, or Broadway. No rock, no jazz, no anything that people actually wanted to hear. If you wanted different music, too bad. Buy a radio. But wait, it gets better. The player cost $200, about $2,000 in today's money. The records were expensive too. And they wore out quickly because the system used extremely high tracking force to minimize skipping, which didn't work anyway. Chrysler offered it from 1956 to 1959. Sales were dismal. Warranty claims were astronomical. Dealers hated it. Customers hated it. The only people who liked it were CBS executives who thought they'd revolutionized in-car entertainment. They even tried again in 1960 with an RCA-built player that used regular 45s. It failed too, because playing vinyl records in a car is fundamentally stupid. No amount of engineering can overcome basic physics. The 8-track player arrived in 1965 and made car record players look even more ridiculous. Tape was durable, compact, and didn't skip. Everything the highway hi-fi wasn't. Today, original highway hi-fi players are collector's items. People pay thousands for them. Not to use them, they still don't work properly. Just to own a piece of automotive absurdity. A monument to the idea that just because you can build something doesn't mean you should. Number 2, built-in car phones. In the 1980s, nothing said I've made it quite like a car phone. Not a mobile phone you carried around. A phone permanently installed in your car, because apparently, being unreachable during your commute was unacceptable. These weren't small devices. Early car phones were massive installations. The handset mounted to the center console or transmission tunnel. The transceiver filled your trunk. The antenna drilled through your roof. It was like installing a small broadcasting station in your Mercury Sable. And the cost? Astronomical. The phone itself ran $1,500 to $3,000, that's before installation. Then came the service fees. We're talking $50 a month just to have a number. Calls cost 50 cents to $1 per minute. During peak hours, even more. Business executives were paying $700 monthly phone bills. In 1980s money. But here's the beautiful irony, they barely worked. Coverage was spotty at best. Drive outside major cities and your expensive car phone became a decorative console ornament. The sound quality was terrible. Calls dropped constantly and everyone could listen in with a scanner. Private conversations? Not in your car phone. The status symbol aspect was undeniable, though. Pull up to a red light, pick up that handset, and everyone knew you were important. Or at least pretending to be. Some people would fake calls just to be seen using their car phone. The 1990s killed the car phone. Cellular technology improved, phones got smaller. Why have a phone trapped in your car when you could have one in your pocket? By 1995, portable cell phones were cheaper, better, and actually useful outside your vehicle. The death blow came from rapid technological advancement. Car phones couldn't be upgraded. That $3,000 system became obsolete within 5 years. When analog networks shut down, millions of car phones became completely useless, permanently. Today, finding a car with an original car phone is like finding automotive archaeology. They're conversation pieces, reminders of when being connected meant being physically wired to your vehicle. Some enthusiasts have retrofitted them with Bluetooth to work with modern phones, which is somehow even more ridiculous than the original concept. We've gone from phones built into cars to cars built into phones. Your smartphone probably has more computing power than every car phone ever made combined. Progress is weird sometimes. Number 1, automatic seatbelts. And here it is, the absolute worst, the most hated, the most dangerous safety feature ever installed in a car, automatic seatbelts. If you drove a car made between 1987 and 1995, you probably have PTSD from these things. The concept seemed logical, people weren't wearing seatbelts, so make the seatbelts automatic. When you open the door, a motor would slide the shoulder belt forward along a track, get in, close the door, and the belt would slide back into position. Hands-free safety. What actually happened was automotive torture. The motor-driven belt would assault you every time you entered the car. It would catch your neck, strangle your passengers, and occasionally trap people inside. The track would jam, the motor would burn out, and then you'd have a seatbelt permanently stuck in whatever position it died in, usually right across your face. But here's the truly insane part. They only automated the shoulder belt. The lap belt, still manual. So most people only wore half a seatbelt, which is actually more dangerous than no seatbelt at all. The horror stories were endless. People getting clotheslined while entering their cars, drinks getting knocked out of hands, ice cream cones sliced in half. One woman in Florida was actually decapitated in a crash because she was only wearing the automatic shoulder belt. The lap belt that would have saved her life sat unused. Mechanics hated them. They'd get tangled in the mechanisms while working on cars. Passengers were terrified of them. Children would cry when the belt came at them like an automotive snake. And if you were tall, forget it. The belt would drag across your face every single time. Some owners disconnected them entirely. Others jury-rigged them to stay in one position. Dealerships did a booming business in deactivating automatic seatbelts. It was a safety feature that made people less safe. Government regulations finally killed them. Airbags became mandatory, eliminating the need for automatic restraints. Thank God. Nobody mourned their passing, nobody asked for them back. They remain the perfect example of good intentions creating terrible results. Today's cars have seatbelt reminders, gentle chimes that politely suggest you buckle up, no motors, no tracks, no attempted strangulation, just a simple reminder to do the smart thing. Sometimes the old-fashioned way really is the best way. Click it or ticket. But at least your car won't try to strangle you in the process. And there you have it. That's 10 more examples of automotive innovation that thankfully stayed in the past where they belong. From record players that couldn't handle a speed bump to seatbelts that actively tried to kill you, these features prove that not every idea is a good idea. Did any of your cars have these features? Did I miss any spectacularly bad ones? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this trip through automotive failure, hit that like button and subscribe for more content about the weird, wild, and wonderfully terrible world of car history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.